Welcome to a special edition of the Best Soccer Show. It's Jerry DuBois with you today. Jason Davis is not with us, but we are joined right now by former U.S. U17 Youth National Team coach and current Philadelphia Union head coach, John Hackworth. John, thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate you coming on the line.
No problem, Jared. Glad to be here.
You know, John, we really wanted to kind of talk to you and touch base. There's so many interesting things going on with Philly this season. Obviously, your first full year with the team. But before we really jump into Philly, in the last couple of days, something kind of topical that we covered on our last show, Jurgen Klinsmann just announced his roster for the January camp. No Union members get called into this camp. We kind of thought maybe a Shannon Williams, maybe a young player like a Michael Farfan might get a call. Were you kind of disappointed by this or surprised at all by this?
We did have Jeff Parke, so he's been called in. He was an off-season acquisition, so we're happy for Jeff. That's great. Personally, I was a little surprised. I thought, one of those guys you mentioned may have gotten an opportunity. Specifically looking at some of the other players that were called in, I thought maybe one of those guys would get an opportunity.
Yeah, my apologies. I guess I still think of Jeff Parke as a Seattle player for some reason, but you're right.
Change that thinking. He's a Union guy now, so
and a very good pickup. I mean, this is a guy in Jeff Parke that wanted to come to Philly. It's got to be nice to have a guy like that says, "Hey, that's the city I want to play for," and you can get a deal like that done.
Yeah, it's fantastic. We're really happy to have Jeff, and obviously his call up, I think, is well earned. We're really happy for him, but we're most excited about having him here at the Union and playing for us this year.
While we're talking about the national team for 1 second, as a former youth national team coach yourself, I'm sure you're used to the fact that there's never going to be a unilateral acceptance of any kind of roster or anything like that, or who all's called in. Is there any one thing that you wish the average U.S. soccer fan could understand about a national team coach picking a camp roster?
I don't know if there's any one thing, Jared. There's so many factors that go into it. But in general, I think people have to understand that there are so many different things out there that a national team coach has to take into consideration. A lot of times, players that fans want selected or who think should be, for one reason or another, are not available. So there's so many factors that go into it. It's difficult. I know Jurgen and his staff, have gone through that whole process, and it's a very difficult time for them because they're not only selecting players for the January camp, but, this is a preparation camp for them getting ready for the World Cup qualifiers.
When people go into the Union, when people think about the Union right now, the word I most hear associated with the Philadelphia Union is youth. Was this intentional, given your background, and doesn't it kind of fit into your strength as a coach to have that association?
I would say yes and no. At the end of the day, our number one goal here, as with any professional first team, has to be to get results on the field, and that's different from the player development that I was involved in the past. I think these two things go hand in hand, though. And the fact is that we had a young roster here, for sure last year, youngest team in the league. And then if you look at the rosters that we put out on the field, we're definitely the youngest playing team in the league. And that's fantastic. I think we gave young guys a huge opportunity last year. At the same time, we know we have to improve on our results. Our off-season acquisitions are very experienced players, so we think we have a good balance going into this year.
While we're talking youth with Philly does their youth system really differently than most other teams in MLS who have gone the way of the academy system. For people that may not know, can you kind of explain the way the Union's approach with their youth system and whether or not you feel it remain the same going forward?
Sure. Well, in a nutshell, what we decided to do was have a club-neutral youth program. Rather than, I have watched, and the club has too, so many MLS clubs come into a market and start an academy, and whether they meant to or not, they alienate a lot of the youth soccer supporters in their own market. And we chose to have a different approach for many reasons. Part of it was we wanted to, try to develop this culture here in Philly, and improve the environment for the youth players, for the youth coaches, for the leagues, etc. And but there are other reasons too. Ultimately, what we have is now a program that from day one we have never charged a single penny to a youth player. We have a fantastic youth partner in YSC and a facility that is state-of-the-art. For those that haven't ever been there, it's fantastic. But moving forward, we're going to continue a lot of that. We'll also have to, like any club around the world, move to a full-time program.
John, I'm not sure how candid you can be about this, but does the league support the way that Philly's doing their youth system, or is there some pressure to try to go the way everyone else is doing it because that's how everyone else is doing it?
It was both. The league was very supportive because they knew our reasons and rationale for starting, but at the same time, the league has certain standards, and the league is going to make sure that every MLS club has a full-time program specifically for the older age groups.
Last season as assistant coach who took over a team, people probably didn't see this as necessarily a John Hackworth side. How excited are you to get out the gates and put out a product that you have more ownership of, and it's going to have your name attached to it full on?
I don't ever think of it in those terms. I think we have a great group of players here, and our staff is very experienced, and I would say they're high level. So from my perspective, I enjoy the work that goes into it every single day. We are definitely excited because we're very optimistic about our chances going into this next season. We know we have a lot of excellent returning players. And at the same time, have added some very exciting acquisitions here in the off season. So we're just excited, is the bottom line. I don't think of it as John Hackworth or me anything. It's certainly a team, and it takes a lot of pieces to make all that work.
Well, speaking about the pieces that are coming in, you've also added a few of those in addition to the ones you already had. Tactically, going into this season, how does a team that you're going to have some time with the build now, what does a Philly team look like with you running it in your mind?
I think it's going to be similar to what people saw at the end of the year. I think it's going to be a very attack-oriented team, a team that tries to get to goal in 4 to 5 passes, and yet a team that dictates general possession. We want to put our opponents under pressure when we win the ball back. When we can go to goal, we certainly want to do that quickly. But when it's not on, and that's the thing that a lot of fans get frustrated with, when the opportunity is not on to go forward, you really need to be able to dictate the rhythm. And I think that's something that our team has been successful at. And as we grow and have a little more experience, I think having possession and then being able to strike quickly is the foundation of any good soccer team.
Yeah, I would say Brian Carroll's probably a very central piece to that as a veteran guy, a guy who's won MLS Cups. And how does a player like Michael Farfan, does he need to look at a guy like Brian Carroll? Is that his main guy that you think he needs to look to understand that relationship of when to go forward? Because Michael Farfan's a great young player that you guys have access to that really is exciting when he goes forward. But does he need to maybe look to a guy like Brian Carroll to figure out that rhythm?
I mean, absolutely, and I hope that that mix of having a young player like Michael and having a seasoned veteran like Brian is a good mix, and they play different roles within the midfield, certainly. But Michael, can certainly learn a lot from Brian, and hopefully Brian can provide Michael with a lot of service so that Michael can pull the strings and do the things that he does best in the attacking half of the field.
Philly has made there's 2 real big names circulating around the offseason, and that's obviously Sebastian Le Toux and Fredy Adu for kind of different reasons. Can you speak a little bit about both Sebastian Le Toux's return and then also Fredy Adu's current status with the team?
Well, look, we're very happy to have Sebastian back in Philly. He was a fan favorite here. He was really important to the first 2 seasons we had here in establishing a lot of things. So we're really thankful that we were able to get him here, and we think that right away our attack has improved with Sebastian. It's going to be fun to have him Union jersey and PPL, and I know the fans will appreciate that. But the coaches and the players themselves we're looking forward to it. As for Fredy, at this point, we haven't finalized anything with him, so I can't really say one way or another. We're still trying to talk and work things out. A lot of things that, unfortunately, I just can't talk about.
That's understandable. I figured that might be the case. In the addition of Sebastian Le Toux, who was the Phillies' top striker 2 years ago, you've brought in Connor Casey to join a striker core that already included Jack Mack. It's early on, John, but what do you see this as a move to spur competition, or is your thinking that Le Toux may take a role that more in the midfield over the course of the season?
I mean, look, I told you earlier that we want to be attack-oriented, and I think having Sebastian and McInerney and Casey, charging the front line, I think that's a fantastic and very formidable attacking trio. So my thought is that I need to get all 3 of those players on the field at the same time. It also gives us a lot of tactical options, having players of that ability. We can line them up in different spots. We can play different systems and try to take advantage of our opponents. So the plan was not to just create competition, although I think that's great for a young player like Jack McInerney. I think he's going to have to raise his game. He had to do that anyway, coming off the heels of his success last year. And I think a guy like Connor Casey, I mean, I was with him with the full national team. He was instrumental in our run to the finals of the Confederation Cup in South Africa in 2009. He was instrumental in our team qualifying for the 2010 World Cup. I know a healthy Connor Casey is one of the best forwards in this league, and we're looking forward to having him.
Yeah, you said it, a healthy Connor Casey. That's the hard part. With a couple weeks left, actually, the transfer window just opened up recently. You got about a month or so left in it. Do you see Philly making any kind of big move for maybe a DP or anything like that, or do you see that going more of a maybe like a lesser route, trying to find more role players on this team?
Well, you can only go after and try to acquire players that fit your salary cap and your budget and your roster spots. So we've made a lot of moves here in the off season. We really feel good about the team that we're bringing back, but we're not. I wouldn't say we're done yet either. And I don't know that you're ever done at this level. So always need to be looking out for a way to improve your team. So we're certainly doing that. We have the draft coming up. We have some players that we're targeting, and it's just a matter of whether we can get those players signed or not.
It's funny you bring up the draft. That was going to be my last question for you, John, is that you were obviously the U17 national team coach through 2007. It's been 5 years since that, and a lot of those kids are right now 21, 22, about to come out of college and into the draft. Who's going to have the upper hand in this draft, you or a guy like Caleb Porter who's just coming out of the college system?
It'll be interesting to see how that works out. I feel like I still have a lot of good knowledge of those players, not only watching them as they played in college, but certainly having been around evaluating, scouting, and coaching several of them in the national program. So still think I have a really good handle on things. Certainly Caleb does, coming straight out of college and being with the Olympic team. So it'll be interesting. I'll say that for sure.
Yeah, to me, that's one of the most fun, I think, undertones for the draft, as I'm looking forward to it, is to see that battle between the two of you and who gets the upper hand over the course of this draft. John, really appreciate you taking the time to come on with us. John Hackworth, current Philadelphia Union head coach going into the 2013 season. Thanks for joining us, John.